Battery passports are an information sharing tool, designed to improve know-how within the battery value chain and its overall capability. But their benefits are largely dependent on the information that ends up inside each passport. This is dependent on different manufacturers, distributors, customers, repairers, waste treatment facilities, and other ecosystem actors, recognizing the symbiotic opportunities that they can achieve through the use of battery passports. It is also dependent on their willingness to place information into and retrieve information from each battery passport in practice. If the benefit only exists in one direction, such as from a manufacturer to a customer, then regulation can be used to encourage wider socio-environmental objectives, by placing a mandatory obligation to publish specific pieces of information. My name's Paul, and in this first Insight video, we will be discussing the types of information that the EU thinks should be contained within a battery passport. On the 10th of December 2020, the European Commission first proposed its modernised battery and battery waste regulations, superseding rules first introduced in 2006. Now close to adoption, these new regulations will change the requirements for batteries and battery waste across the EU. To reduce the impact of the battery value chain on the environment, the directive introduces a range of interventions. It seeks to harmonise disparate regulatory texts and bans the use of certain hazardous substances. It introduces new measures and targets for increased collection and recycling, and extends the producer responsibility for waste. It brings new labelling for battery end users, and it increases transparency requirements for supply chain oversight. To achieve these aims, a variety of information points must be communicated between different stakeholders in the battery ecosystem. To facilitate this communication, the EU regulations introduce three new innovations: a European electronic exchange system, a battery passport, and a QR smart label. Introduced in separate articles of the regulation, these are three systems for the communication of sustainability-related information points. The EU presents these as three separate systems, but recognises that a subset of integration will be needed between the exchange and passport systems. However, in practice, these three innovations are the entry points into what we would consider a battery passport ecosystem: a distributed network of information systems where different stakeholders can supply and access information using three common interfaces. In this distributed view of a solution, information predominantly exists within the passport ecosystem, not the individual systems identified in the regulation. These three systems are merely the conduits by which information can be accessed and input. And while some local storage can't be avoided, the majority of data will pass through these systems rather than be stored by them. But what kind of information does the EU want to see inside these three portals? In our research, we find that the information sought falls into one of 9 key queries. What are the materials and substances contained within a battery product? What are the social and environmental impacts caused by the life of the battery? How can the lives of the battery product be extended? Through responsible decision-making during and at the end of a product's life. What is the prior history of the battery? What significant events have occurred? How does the battery perform against sustainable design criteria? Does it still satisfy those criteria after a period of use? How does the business perform against industry sustainability objectives? How circular are a business's products, for example? Can the business demonstrate that their practices and those of their supply chains are sustainable and responsible? How do 2 or more different battery products compare? Which is the more sustainable product? And how is information exchange harmonised? How is the battery ecosystem described so that all stakeholders can talk a common language and interact efficiently? Come back for our next video where we will be discussing the specific information points called out in the legislation under each question category. But for now, I'd like to thank you all for listening and hope that this video has provided a useful overview of the basic scope of the EU's battery passport regulations. In future videos, we hope to expand upon the concept of the battery ecosystem and explore the opportunities and obligations of the EU regulations and other symbiotic passport opportunities.